The leather chair creaked as I shifted in the lawyer's office, watching David's pen glide across the divorce papers. His satisfaction was palpable, radiating from his expensive suit down to his Italian leather shoes. He thought he won everything. "There," he said, sliding the papers across the mahogany desk with a flourish. "Your turn, Rebecca. Though I don't know why you're smiling. You're about to be homeless." My name is Rebecca Chen, and at 45 years old, I was signing away 15 years of marriage to a man who'd orchestrated my financial ruin. Or at least that's what he thought. "Just sign here and here," our divorce lawyer, Mr. Patterson, pointed to the marked lines, "and everything will be finalized." I picked up the pen, its weight familiar after years of signing documents for the art gallery I'd built from scratch. The same gallery David had somehow managed to seize control of through a network of legal loopholes and carefully crafted lies. "You really should thank me," David continued, adjusting his Rolex, a birthday gift I'd given him 3 years ago. "I'm doing you a favor. The gallery was failing under your management. Now at least it has a chance of survival." I thought about the last 6 months, watching him systematically dismantle everything I built. He'd started small, suggesting I add him to the gallery's accounts for tax purposes. Then came the subtle manipulations, important emails mysteriously deleted, clients suddenly canceling major purchases, supplies arriving damaged or not at all. "All done," I said, setting the pen down with a soft click. David stood, buttoning his jacket. "Well, this has been fun. Don't worry about moving out immediately. I'll give you until the end of the week. I'm generous like that." I gathered my purse, keeping my expression neutral. "That's very kind of you." He frowned slightly, perhaps thrown by my calm demeanor. He'd expected tears, pleading, maybe even anger. Instead, he got serenity. It clearly unsettled him. "You're taking this surprisingly well," he said, his eyes narrowing. "Given that you're about to lose everything." If only he knew about the letter I'd received 3 weeks ago, just as his plan was reaching its crescendo. The letter from my grandmother's estate lawyer, requesting my presence at tomorrow morning's will reading. My grandmother, May Lynn, had passed away quietly in her sleep 2 weeks ago. While David had been busy transferring the gallery's assets and emptying our joint accounts, I'd been helping arrange her funeral. He hadn't even bothered to attend, claiming he was too busy with work. What he didn't know, what no one knew, was that Gran had been more than just the quiet old woman who lived in that sprawling estate on the outskirts of town. She'd been a silent force in the art world for decades, collecting masterpieces and investing in emerging artists long before it was fashionable. "I've learned to accept things I can't control," I replied, standing to leave. "Good luck with the gallery, David." His smile faltered slightly. "That's it? No fighting back, no tears?" David had generously allowed me to keep my old Honda Civic, probably because it was worth so little compared to his precious BMW, the same car he'd bought using profits from my gallery's biggest sale last year. Inside my small rental, I kicked off my heels and poured a glass of wine. The place was sparsely furnished, just basics from IKEA and a few personal items I'd managed to pack before David changed the locks on our house. He called it a security precaution. I called it what it was, another power play. My phone buzzed with a text from Sophie, my best friend and the gallery's former assistant manager. David had fired her 2 weeks ago, claiming budget cuts. "How did it go?" she asked. "Would it make a difference?" He laughed, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I suppose not. Goodbye, Rebecca. Try not to think too much about everything you've lost." As I walked out of the lawyer's office, my heels clicking against the marble floor, I thought about the last conversation I'd had with Gran just days before she passed. "Remember, little flower," she'd said, using the nickname she'd given me as a child. "Sometimes the best revenge is patience. Let them think they've won. Then show them what real power looks like." I'd always assumed she was talking about her own experiences, the way she'd built her empire quietly while others underestimated her. Now, watching David stride to his car, my car, technically, but he'd taken that too, I understood exactly what she meant. The drive to my temporary apartment was peaceful. I smiled, typing back, exactly as expected. He took everything. That smug bastard. I still can't believe he managed to steal the gallery. Are you okay? Better than okay. Having dinner tomorrow night? I might have some interesting news to share. Wouldn't miss it. Want me to bring wine? Definitely. We might have something to celebrate. I set my phone down, walking to the window. The city sparkled below, lights twinkling like stars. Somewhere out there, David was probably celebrating his victory, maybe already planning how to redecorate my gallery. My gallery? The thought still burned. I'd spent 10 years building it from nothing, cultivating relationships with artists, establishing our reputation. David had spent 6 months destroying it all, and somehow convinced everyone, the board, our investors, even some of our oldest clients, that he was the victim of my mismanagement. The perfect husband stepping in to save his wife's failing business. No one had questioned it. No one had looked too closely at the convenient timing of the canceled sales, the missing shipments, the accounting irregularities that he'd somehow discovered. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Marcus, my grandmother's estate lawyer. "Everything's prepared for tomorrow," his message read. 10 a.m. sharp, don't be late. I texted back a quick confirmation, then went to my bedroom to check my outfit for tomorrow. The black Chanel suit, one of the few expensive pieces I'd managed to keep, hung ready. Gran had bought it for me years ago, insisting that every woman needed one perfect suit. "For moments when you need to remind them who you are," she said with that knowing smile of hers. As I lay in bed that night, I thought about David's face when he'd signed those divorce papers. So confident, so sure of his victory. He thought he'd taken everything from me, stripped me of my business, my home, my dignity. But Gran had taught me something valuable. True power isn't about what you show the world. It's about what you keep hidden until the perfect moment. Tomorrow, at exactly 10 a.m., David would learn that lesson the hard way. I woke early the next morning, taking extra care with my appearance. Every detail mattered today. Hair perfectly styled, makeup flawless, Gran's vintage Cartier watch, which David had never known was real, gleaming on my wrist. The drive to the estate lawyer's office took me past my gallery. Through the windows, I could see David already there, rearranging my carefully curated displays. He'd probably show up late to work today, still basking in his triumph from yesterday's divorce signing. Marcus's office was housed in one of the city's oldest buildings, all dark wood and brass fixtures. His secretary showed me into the conference room, where a small group had already gathered. Most I recognized: Cousin Emma from Seattle, Uncle James from Boston, a few distant relatives who always showed up for family events. "Rebecca," Marcus greeted me warmly. "Right on time. Shall we begin?" I took my seat at the large table, noting the thick envelope in front of Marcus. My grandmother's will, the document that was about to change everything. "Before we start," Marcus said, adjusting his glasses, "Mrs. Lin left specific instructions about how this meeting should proceed. First, we'll address the smaller bequests. Then, we'll move on to the main inheritance." For the next hour, I listened as Marcus distributed Gran's personal items and smaller financial gifts. Jewelry to Cousin Emma, the vacation house in Maine to Uncle James, various artworks and family heirlooms to other relatives. Finally, Marcus cleared his throat. "And now for the primary inheritance. Mrs. Lin's art collection, investment portfolio, and controlling interest in Lin Enterprises." The room grew still. This was what everyone had been waiting for. Ron's real fortune, the empire she built quietly over decades. To my granddaughter, Rebecca Chen, I leave everything else. The silence broke into a cascade of whispers and gasps. Uncle James's face turned red. Cousin Emma dropped her water glass. Marcus continued reading. "Rebecca has shown the same quiet strength and determination that I relied on to build my collection. She understands that true power isn't about flash and noise. It's about patience, wisdom, and knowing when to strike." My hands trembled slightly as Marcus passed me another envelope. Inside were documents transferring ownership of Gran's entire art collection, one of the most valuable private collections in the country, along with her investment portfolio and business holdings. "The total value," Marcus said quietly, "is approximately $2.3 billion. I heard someone choke, probably Uncle James. "Additionally," Marcus continued, "Mrs. Lin left a personal letter for Rebecca, to be opened privately." The rest of the meeting passed in a blur of paperwork and legal formalities. As other family members filed out, some offering stiff congratulations while others could barely hide their shock, I remained seated, staring at Gran's letter. Finally alone, I opened it with trembling fingers. "My dearest Rebecca, if you're reading this, then everything has happened as I feared it might. I've watched David's machinations from afar, seeing how he's tried to destroy everything you've built. Men like him are predictable. They mistake kindness for weakness, patience for submission. But you, my little flower, are neither weak nor submissive. You are a Lin woman, and we have survived far worse than greedy husbands and stolen galleries. The timing of this inheritance is no accident. I've arranged everything carefully, working with Marcus to ensure the transfer would happen after your divorce was finalized. David will have no claim to any of it. The art collection includes several pieces that I believe would look particularly lovely in a certain gallery, one that you'll soon be able to buy back, along with every other property that Snake thought he could steal from you. Remember what I taught you: revenge isn't about destruction. It's about reconstruction, building something so magnificent that those who doubted you must live forever in the shadow of their mistake. Make me proud, little flower. All my love, Gran. The next morning, I sat in Marcus's office, reviewing the full extent of my inheritance. The art collection alone was staggering. Over 300 pieces, including works by Picasso, Monet, and Van Gogh, along with an impressive array of contemporary masterpieces. Your grandmother was very strategic, Marcus said, sliding another document across the desk. She specifically structured everything to protect you from any potential claims by David. I picked up the paper, a detailed list of Gran's business holdings. Lin Enterprises is bigger than I imagined. Marcus nodded. She kept most of it quiet. The company owns real estate across 3 continents, including— He paused, allowing himself a small smile. The building that houses your gallery. I felt my breath catch. What? She bought it 6 months ago through a shell corporation, right around the time David started making his moves. Marcus leaned back in his chair. She knew Rebecca. She saw what was coming. Of course she had. Gran had always seen everything. My phone buzzed. A text from Sophie. Turn on channel 7 now. I grabbed the remote from Marcus's desk, switching on the office TV. There it was, scrolling across the bottom of the screen. Art World shocked by revelation of $2.3 billion inheritance. Rebecca Chen named sole heir to Mei Lin fortune. That was fast, Marcus commented. David will have seen it by now, I said quietly. Right on cue, my phone started ringing. David's name flashed on the screen. I declined the call. He'll be at the gallery, I said, standing. I should go. Marcus stood as well. Would you like me to send security with you? I thought about it for a moment, then shook my head. No, I need to do this myself. The drive to the gallery felt different now. Everything felt different. As I pulled into my usual parking spot, the one David had tried to give to his new assistant, I could see him pacing inside the gallery, phone pressed to his ear. I took a deep breath, checked my reflection in the rearview mirror, and stepped out of the car. The gallery's bell chimed as I pushed open the door, announcing my arrival. David spun around, his face flushed. You, he sputtered. Why didn't you tell me about this? About what, David? I asked calmly, setting my purse on the reception desk. My reception desk. Don't play games with me, he snapped. The inheritance. Your grandmother's fortune. You let me think you had nothing. I looked around the gallery at the changes he'd already started making, the artwork he'd moved, the signs of his attempt to erase my presence. You know what's interesting? I said, running my finger along the desk's surface. In the 15 years we were married, you never once asked about my grandmother's art collection, never showed any interest in her business ventures. You were too busy plotting how to take what was right in front of you. That's not— I didn't, he stammered. And now here you are, in my gallery, in a building that my grandmother owns, realizing that everything you thought you've stolen is worth a fraction of what I actually have. The color drained from his face. The building? You made sure of that yesterday, remember? Which means you have no claim to anything I've inherited. Not the art collection, not the business holdings, and certainly not this gallery. I walked to the center of the room, where he'd moved my favorite sculpture, a delicate glass piece that had been the gallery's first major acquisition. You have until the end of the week to vacate the premises, I said, carefully moving the sculpture back to its original position. I nodded. Gran bought it 6 months ago, which means your lease agreement isn't worth the paper it's printed on. You can't do this, he said, but his voice had lost its edge. The divorce agreement is final, I cut him off. You made sure of that yesterday, remember? which means you have no claim to anything I've inherited. Not the art collection, not the business holdings, and certainly not this gallery. I walked to the center of the room, where he'd moved my favorite sculpture, a delicate glass piece that had been the gallery's first major acquisition. You have until the end of the week to vacate the premises, I said, carefully moving the sculpture back to its original position. I'm generous like that. His face contorted with rage. You planned this. You and that scheming grandmother of yours. Careful, I warned, my voice sharp. That scheming grandmother spent decades building an empire while men like you underestimated her. She taught me everything I know about patience, about waiting for the right moment to show your true strength. I picked up a gallery announcement he'd had printed, his name prominently displayed where mine used to be. You thought you were so clever, I continued, manipulating accounts, sabotaging shipments, turning clients against me. But you never stopped to consider that maybe, just maybe, I came from something bigger than this gallery. Rebecca, he tried, his tone suddenly conciliatory. We can work something out. A partnership, maybe. I laughed, the sound echoing off the gallery walls. A partnership. Yesterday you were celebrating taking everything from me. Today you want to be partners? I was angry, he said quickly. People say things they don't mean during divorces. We could start over. No, I cut him off. We can't. But I will make you an offer. He perked up slightly. What kind of offer? Leave now. Walk away from the gallery, the house, all of it. Sign everything back over to me, and I won't look too closely at your creative accounting over the past 6 months. Are you threatening me? Not at all, I smiled. I'm giving you a chance to leave with your reputation intact. Grand's lawyers are very thorough, David. How long do you think it would take them to uncover every little scheme you've been running? He stared at me for a long moment, and I could see the calculations running behind his eyes. Finally, his shoulders slumped. How long do I have? The paperwork will be ready this afternoon. Have your things out by tomorrow. He nodded slowly, his earlier bravado completely deflated. As he walked past me toward the door, he paused. I never really knew you, did I? No, I said quietly. You were too busy trying to destroy me to ever really see me. After he left, I sat at my desk again, and called Sophie. It's done, I said when she answered. The gallery's mine again. I just saw David practically running down the street, she laughed. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. He did, in a way. The ghost of the woman he thought he'd destroyed. I looked around at my gallery, already planning how to restore it. Want your job back? Are you kidding? I already cleared my schedule for the rest of the week. When do we start? Tomorrow, I said. We have a lot of work to do. Over the next few weeks, the gallery underwent a transformation, not just physically, though we did restore it to its former glory, but in its very essence. With access to Grand's collection, we could now showcase pieces that most galleries could only dream of displaying. The art world took notice. Critics who'd been swayed by David's narrative about my mismanagement suddenly discovered a new appreciation for my curatorial vision. Clients who'd been hesitant to work with us were now eager to be associated with the Lin family legacy. 1 month after David's departure, we hosted a grand reopening. The gallery was packed with collectors, artists, and critics, all eager to see selections from Grand's legendary collection. I stood in the center of it all, wearing Grand's favorite Chanel dress, watching as people moved from piece to piece in awe. Sophie appeared at my elbow, champagne in hand. Mrs. Henderson just offered to buy the Monet, she whispered. I told her it wasn't for sale. Good, I nodded. These pieces aren't going anywhere. Oh, and David's new gallery, the one he tried to open across town, she grinned. Closed after 2 weeks. Apparently, his investors pulled out when they heard about what happened here. I took a sip of champagne, letting the bubbles dance on my tongue. Gran always said the art world was built on reputation. Once you lose that. Speaking of reputation, Sophie nodded toward the entrance, where a reporter from Art Weekly was waiting hopefully. Ready to tell your story? I thought about everything that had happened, the betrayal, the loss, the triumph. About Gran's careful planning and quiet strength. About the lessons she taught me about patience and power. Yes, I said, straightening my shoulders. I think it's time. The interview would run a week later, under the headline, The Queen's Gambit, How Rebecca Chen Turned the Tables in Art World Power Play. David would read it from his new apartment in the suburbs, where he'd retreated to lick his wounds. He'd see the photos of me in the gallery he tried to steal, standing proudly among artwork worth more than he'd ever imagined. But more importantly, young women in the art world would read it and learn what Gran had taught me. That true power isn't about quick victories or hostile takeovers. It's about building something lasting, something meaningful. That evening, after the last guest had left, I walked through the quiet gallery. Each piece seemed to glow in a soft lighting, testament to a lifetime of careful collecting, a seeing value where others didn't. I stopped at my favorite spot, where Gran's portrait now hung. She'd never allowed it to be displayed during her lifetime, insisting that the art should speak for itself. But now it felt right to have her here, watching over everything. "Thank you, Gran," I whispered to her smiling image. Outside, the city lights twinkled like stars. Through the window, I could see my reflection overlapping with the portrait. Two generations of Lin women, both underestimated, both triumphant. David had tried to write my ending, but instead he'd only set the stage for my new beginning. And this time, I wasn't just running a gallery, I was building a legacy, one that would make Gran proud.